We're going to take a closer look at the situation on the ground now. Our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clarke, joins me. Thanks again for jumping into the studio for us, Michael. Let's begin with what is happening on the Israeli offensive side of things. What is that offensive looking like today?
Yes, Belle, the Israeli 162nd Division is moving from the north, moving on the hospital areas. We've been talking about hospitals all week, and there's a reason for that, because the Israelis say that Hamas have most of the facilities underneath the hospitals, and they're going for Hamas facilities. So there's been quite a lot of fighting around the Indonesia hospital. That's been going on for some days. Explosions at the Al-Nasser hospital, not entirely clear what may have caused them, but there was some today. And in particular, they're moving in towards the Al-Shifa Hospital, which is the biggest in the northern part of the territory. And what's interesting is that the Israelis report that Hamas people, they're fighting and then disappearing. They're not staying. And so there are some fierce clashes, and then Hamas disappear. Whether that means that they're trying to draw into the city, or whether, in fact, they're losing heart because they're in a cell structure, and Hamas's communications have been completely taken down. So, when you're operating in cells, it's quite hard to be brave. When you're in a battalion of 600 people, you have to be brave. If you're 3 or 4 of you, and one of you's already been killed, the other 3 may not be so brave. So Hamas are fighting and then disappearing, fighting and disappearing. We'll see where that leads.
Yeah. What about this focus on Al-Shifa at the moment?
Al-Shifa itself is the biggest target at the moment in the north before the Israelis get into the city. And what they say is that Al-Shifa is the base, underneath Al-Shifa is the base, not just for the headquarters of Hamas, but for a weapons factory, a fuel store where they've been storing fuel itself, ready for this offensive, signals, intelligence, and, of course, that Yahya Sinwar, the leader, the Israelis say, is under there somewhere, if he's still there. So they're moving in on it. But, of course, Al-Shifa is also a place where thousands, tens of thousands of Gazans went as a place of safety, get into the hospital grounds. Well, here they are now, I'm afraid. They're right in the firing line as the Israelis move in on it. Yeah, and, of course, there'll be questions there for the US. We know the US is very diplomatically involved. What about militarily? How involved there? This is where the war, we've got to keep our eye on several fronts at once. The United States attacked Deir ez-Zor on Wednesday. If ever there's a war going on in any part of the Levant, there's always something going on in Deir ez-Zor. It seems to be in the middle of nowhere, but it's actually just the crossroads of the Levant. And the Americans attacked it because they said a lot of weapons were being stored there that were being used to attack them. More than 40 attacks on American positions in mainly Iraq, but also in Syria, in the last 3 weeks. So the Americans are responding to that, while the Israelis are also attacking Iranian groups operating in Syria. Meanwhile, while this is going on in Gaza, southern Lebanon is still in a state of incipient warfare. Southern Lebanon, northern Israel, there's a sort of artillery duel which is just below the level of outright warfare. There is a lot of unrest on the West Bank. 150-odd Palestinians have been killed in the last 3 weeks by Israeli security forces and settlers, and that is in quite a state. Houthi rebels from Yemen are launching missiles against Israel up the Red Sea, many of which are being intercepted, weapons and drones. And then you've got these air attacks in Syria by Israel and the United States. And so while we keep our eye on the agony of Gaza, there are at least 4 other sites, 4 other fronts, any one of which may tip over into a much bigger conflict. So this is a conflict which is simmering across 4 other places while the agony of Gaza goes on. Yeah, OK, and we keep an eye on it with you. Thank you very much, Michael Clarke.